Hi there, this video is going to take everything we've learnt with color range and put it into a practical exercise. I felt like we needed this video because learning color range in isolation is great, but often you'll run into issues when you're trying to combine it with a bunch of other things like type here. So we'll do this exercise to kind of flesh out any problems that you will run into in the future, plus it'll allow us to practice what we've learnt so far. Are you ready to make a super smoothie ink, well it's meant to be banana splash thing? If you are, let's get started. All right, so I'm starting with an example from earlier on. You could just jump in and just start with the background color, and you might decide the fruit splash stuff you don't have to actually do. You just want to do the ink with the text. Up to you. But what I want to do is I want to open up the ink splashes. So go to File, Open, and in your folder called O2 Selections, there's one called Color Range 6 and 7. All right, so 6 and 7 just variants of the same kind of ink splash. I'm going to select them. We're going to run into some issues and I'll show you how to fix them. Then we'll change the colors and get it interacting with the type. So whenever you get ink splashes like this is from Adobe stock and it's on a white background, which kind of sucks. It'd be nice if it was clear cut already, but it's not. So let's work with Color Splash 6. So we're going to have to use a couple of tools to make this work. Let's start with our good old faithful select color range. We're going to not use skin tones, we're going to use sampled colors. We're going to click in here, and what we might do is hit the plus button, drag across a bit of it. Bit of that as well. You too, you. So we've got a pretty good selection there. If you're just joining us for this video here, just make sure your selection preview is on grayscale. It gives you a good kind of black and white contrast. Let's click OK, and let's turn it into a mask. Now our biggest problem is, can you see there's a white chunk in there? So it's missed that out. So when I turn it into a mask and I click on this button here, it's cut little holes in here, and you got to decide whether it's worth fixing these up or not. I'm going to, so I'm going to use my, remember our little trick? We hold down the Alt key on a Mac or Option key. No, it is Option key on a Mac, or Alt key on a PC, and click on the mask. Makes it super clear. I'm going to grab my brush tool, which is the B key, and I'm using my super shortcuts, wrong, X. So I'm using white as my foreground color, and I'm just kind of tidying up the bits that are clearly not holes. They are just things that color range left behind. How hardcore am I going to do for this? I'm not super worried because it's, I don't know. I know because I've practiced it already that nobody's going to notice any of these small bits, but I guess I'm just showing you. I'm holding spacebar to click and drag around. You probably knew that already. Yeah, we're getting there. Cool. So move it down. Remember, same key, hold down Option on a Mac, hold on a PC, click on the mask to go back. Now, let's check this to see if we've got a good mask. We're going to dive back into the masking technique we used in the intro version of Photoshop course. It's called Photoshop Essentials, but I want to retouch on it because a lot of people will jump into this advanced class and just not do Essentials and miss out some of the super magic that happened in the Essentials course. So what I'm going to do is with my mask selected, I'm going to click Select and Mask. And what's really cool about this is you can say up the top here, it's beyond black, and you can have the opacity right up so you can see a nice contrast with the background. You might say, Dan, that is a perfectly good mask. And I'd probably, Lazy Dan would say, you are right, and not and just hit cancel and get out of here and use it. But let's say it's the front cover or something and it is going on black, which would be tough. So we've used color range to get here. We use the paintbrush to fill in some parts. Let's try and smooth this out. Smooth is a nice one in this option. So watch this, smooth. Up a bit higher. You can see just kind of like smoothing out the edges, make them a little fuzzy, but that's okay. This image is a little out of focus as well. And that might be enough, right? So a cool little shortcut is the P key. Just tap it while you're in here and it turns the original back on. Original, soft focus version. Original, it's a little bit slow. So just tap the P key on and off to go back to the original where you are at now. Two other things that I might do is shift the edge just in a little bit. You can see there's still a bit of ghosting around the outside. So shift the edge in a bit, hit the P key. Have I made it better? Worse? It's looking okay. If that doesn't get it, I find decontaminate colors works really well. Watch this. I'm going to put the shift edge back to 0 and just turn on decontaminate colors. You can see there it just kind of fixes up all the edges. It's pretty magic. Now you might remember from the Photoshop Essentials, if I use decontaminate colors, it's going to create a new layer with this mask on it because it does some pretty serious changing of the image. So let's click OK. You can see here, there's the original that I was working on, and because I use decontaminate colors, it says, well, let's just put it on its own layer, because what you'll find is, if I right click and disable this mask, you can see it's done some really crazy stuff to the edges to make it a really crisp, clear selection. It's awesome. We can go back to the original, but that's why you end up with a second layer. Cool, so I'm going to grab my move tool, click, hold, and drag, and go to my weird little banana blueberry smoothie thing. I'm gonna add some text. Okay, before I get into too much coloring for this, so I'm just going to turn all of these off. Now, cool little trick is watch this. If these are all on, you want to turn all of them off except for the background. Just click the first one, hold, 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 mouse, drag it down. Turn them all back on by clicking and holding and dragging across them. Just a nice little quick way of turning just some of them on and off. So I'm going to add some type. So you can skip along this bit. I'm just adding type. But stick around when we go and change the colors of these paint switches. Actually, what I'll do is I'll get the editor to just fast forward this bit. It's not very exciting. All right, we're back. I put in some fonts. If you're looking for these fonts, they are, this one's Museo Sans Condensed. You can download that from Typekit free, but you're really after this one here, right? This one here is called Machine Script, actually Remachine Script. You can see it there. Now I've included this version of this font in your exercise files. Where is it? It's here under font. Now what you'll see, it says for personal use. So if you want to use this commercially, reach out to the owner of this, Google Remachine Script. You can use something like My Fonts to go and pay for it if you want to use it commercially. So this is the free version to use, but you can only use this personally. I love it though. Such a cool font, huh? Now I stopped here. I added a drop shadow. I picked a color. I wanted to drop in here because I wanted to show you just another trick. I want both of these to have the same drop shadow with, so I've applied the drop shadow to super. I can right click anywhere in this kind of gray area. I can say copy layer style, click on smoothies, right click it and say paste layer style. That's a simple but helpful little trick. So now I want to go and recolor this thing, okay? It looks like blood. Strawberry? Nah, it still looks like blood. So I want to make it kind of banana colored. So with a layer selected here, I'm going to go to my adjustments layer. I'm going to play around with hue and saturation. The trouble with doing this here, if I change the hue, it's going to change the background as well. So what I can do is see this little icon here. It's a little, it's got a really long name, but basically it says only affect the layer just underneath. Okay, so this hue and saturation layer is only affecting my color splash now. So you can see when I adjust it, I need to turn those background colors on. Okay, the green and the blue looks a lot nicer. But anyway, hue and saturation, I'm going to pick a color, and what you'll find is like yellow. Some of the colors are perfect, right? They just work really nice. Let's have a look at yellow. Where is yellow? I can't find yellow. Where are you? There you are. Not too green. See, the problem with this is that the yellow ends up being kind of brownish, or in this case, a little bit green. So what you can say is you can say colorize, crank up the saturation, and then find a color. And you can get close to it, but because of these dark colors, it's just not going to work. So what we're going to do is go back to adjustments and play around with the levels. I want to affect just the layer underneath again, so just the color splash. And what we're going to probably have to do is just play around with these grays in the middle here. So there's just not so much of that dark kind of muddy yellow. Depending on what color you need it to be, you might have to adjust around with the darks and the lights, okay, to get kind of where you want it to be. But I'm happy enough with that. Now I'm going to select on this layer here and I want to shrink it down. So before I shrink it down, I want to convert it into a smart object so that it doesn't, so it gets protected, right? So it gets kind of wrapped up and I don't lose resolution. So I'm going to right click it, tell it to be a smart object. I'm going to use my Command T for transform. I'm going to get it to an appropriate size. And now it's just messing around a little bit of like what don't want to do that. Undo, Command T, shrinking down, holding Shift, hold down Alt or Option if you're on a Mac. Does it all from the centers, but let's say I want something like that. And I want it to kind of interact with the background. Okay, especially with type, it's probably just easiest to grab, there's my super layer, right? I just want it kind of poking out in front of the R. Instead of messing around with selections and masking and stuff, I'm just gonna cut the R out, move this back. You see what I'm gonna do here, right? I'm going to duplicate this layer. Okay, duplicating a layer, I can right click it and duplicate it. Extra little trick is hold down the Option key on a Mac or Alt key on a PC and just kind of select and move it. Okay, it makes it duplicate as you're moving it. Okay, I'm going to grab my type tool, select it all, maybe left align, capital R, back to my move tool. It's going to drag it behind my ink. So we're not going to get too fancy with masking this out when it's easy just to separate that text onto its own layer to get this kind of interaction. Now to try and tie in all these different techniques we've used out of color range, we're going to open up a file that we worked on earlier. And it's this one here where we messed around with the skin, remember? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to right click any one of them and convert it into a smart object just so they're all kind of smushed together. I can dive into it, remember, by double clicking it to get inside, but really just so that it's just one unit. I'm going to drag it to our little exercise here. There he is. And because it's a smart object, I can shrink it down without kind of destroying or losing the selection. And again, I want to kind of lean on one of the masking techniques we learned in the earlier Essentials course. For the people that did that one, this is just practice. I promise there won't be too much of this through the course. But for the people just jumping into advanced, it's a trick probably you might not know. First up, with the move tool, I'm going to hold Command Shift and your square bracket to bring it to the top of my layers. If you're on a PC, it's Control Shift, and it's those square brackets that are next to your P key. So hold them both down, and the left one sends it to the back, the right one sends it to the top. It's one I use quite often. Just say all the way at the top, please. I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw an ellipse around it. What I find is people tend to use the this elliptical marquee tool to do round selections, but it's not what I want. It's not better. There is a better way, and this is the way. So I've got my image at the top, I've got my ellipse just underneath, and if I hold down the Option key, so with this top layer selected, the long way we learned in the Essentials course is we went to Layer and we went to this Create Clipping Mask. And I'll show you, that works totally, okay, but I'm gonna show you the pro way. All you do is hold down the Alt key on a PC, Option key on a Mac, and just hover your mouse in between in this layers. And you're looking for that icon. So not that, not that, this. Just click on it and it does the exact same thing as going to Layer, Create Layer Mask. Just a real quick way of doing it. And the cool thing about doing this as a mask is that these are totally separate. I can move my ellipse around, or I can move my image around. I can select both of them by clicking the top one, holding Shift in the second one, and just transform them both. And I'm gonna get something like that. Maybe a bit lower down here. I'm gonna turn on my banana. I'll send them to the top using my shortcuts. Scale them down. Now before I scale them down, I'm gonna convert them into a smart object. You can leave now. Now I'm just kind of trying to turn it into something half decent in terms of a design, which is going to be hard. There's that, blueberries. Where are you, blueberries? There you are. You need to come to the top as well. Might actually duplicate that. Remember our trick of holding down the Option key on a Mac, Alt key on a PC to get two of them, transform them, rotate them, so we've got a few extras. I might put that under the word smoothies. Oh, creative genius. Now duplicate that super, bring it to the top. This one's going to be banana flavored, banana. Just going to use white text, thank you. Make it smaller, Command T. I very often don't use font sizes, okay? I'll use just scaling it to get the right font size. Depends really if we're working with digital or going to kind of print. Print will have to be a little bit more specific with font sizes probably. This is more of a splash social media graphic. Cool. And last thing is that it is way down to the bottom, okay, with all the extra graphics. So I'm going to select this bottom one, hold Shift and click this top one and just grab the whole lot. And because we're on the layer masks and all on their own layers, nothing smushed together because we're pros, I can lift it up. How impressed with this am I? Bro, it looks kind of cool. Let's just say I did a practice example of this and it looks better than that one. So I'm happy. Don't think I like the color of the pink. That, my friend, is a personal choice. Let's finish this here before I waffle on forever. The goal of this video really was to show you how you end up using kind of combinations of tricks. Color range is awesome, but only when you start using it with other things, other techniques, other tips, other shortcuts. That's where you go from a beginner to an advanced user. All right, so that's us. We'll leave it there. Let's get into the next video where we'll set a project for you to do. I'll see you there.